Sandip Sabharwal joining in. Sandeep, I bet your eyes were glued to all of the action happening on the tennis courts over the weekend. It was pretty amazing, wasn't it?
Very exciting matches, especially
Sandeep, you have a
Rohan
scope
Bopanna
also.
winning.
Sandeep, you also have a scope even if you start now. At 46, he's won a Grand Slam.
43, yeah.
At 43, yeah. So you also have a scope now.
But I don't play tennis. They
Are
have to
start karo
discover
na.
some.
That no, start with
They
squash.
have,
No, start with
they have to
squash.
discover some new sport where only plus 45 play. Then I can do it.
Golf maybe, but yeah, indeed it was some stellar action. And then you've got the budget this week, and we were just discussing earlier this morning, Sandeep, that there's not that pre-budget fervor really, not talking about any big bang announcements or anything that would come out of the budget this time around, or no major expectations, right?
There are no major expectation, and that's right also because it's the interim budget. The government is not supposed to announce any uh, major policy measures because they are not going to be the same government. Like the same government with the same faces might come back, but then this government is only till April, May, and then a new government has to take over. So they can't give a budget for the full year. So I think it will be. I don't think there'll be too many announcements at all in this budget.
Uh, but Sandeep, directionally this budget is important because it is the Amrit Kal ka budget. It is a budget where directionally you would know that which way they want to move in terms of the planned capital expenditure. What are their thoughts in terms of how economy is moving? So in terms of intentions and in terms of in scorecard, you pretty much will get that what the thought process is, Sandeep.
The thought process is well known. Like it's social welfare, so more dole outs to farmers and for other measures and reiterating the free food grain, etc., and focus on infrastructure. So I think these are the two areas the government has not focused on consumption, and taxes obviously are very high in India. So uh, they cannot change the tax structure, I would think, in the interim budget. So that we have to wait for later because consumption needs a boost, and for that the only way is to reduce taxes.
Now let's go back to the bank nifty. Let's spend a minute here. Technically, the bank nifty last week got jammed, courtesy HDFC Bank. Now that collateral damage has already happened. Then you got a fillip which came or a support which came from ICICI Bank and Kotak Bank, which in a sense endorsed that the problem is only specific to HDFC Bank. Even a franchise like AU, they may have missed on margins, but their liability franchise is growing in a decent manner. So Sandeep, is the worst really behind the bank nifty because that big collateral damage which had to happen because of HDFC Bank's weightage that already has happened. HDFC Bank is unlikely to fall in the same quantum, which means that that big event jhatka or risk which had to happen, that is already over for the bank nifty, which means time to go back to the bank nifty.
Because I would think that it will take some more time because it all depends on your expectations. So I think the expectations still are too high in terms of credit growth, etc. Now, having gone through the commentary of various banks and the tight liquidity which RBI is keeping, my guess is that credit growth could slow down sharply over the next 1 or 2 quarters as banks fight for deposits and credit deposit ratio is sought to be maintained. So, whether the worst is over or not also depends on the perspective on whether the overall corrective move in the market is over or not. I would still think that the next few weeks, the markets could be volatile. The geopolitical situation is something which we are not talking of now. That's also getting more volatile. You see Brent, it's reaching almost $85. So I think there are events which are happening which also have an impact on the markets. We can't look at the Indian market standalone. So I would think that both the Nifty and Bank Nifty should give up some more gains over the next few weeks. Like today could be a bounce back day, that's fine. But ultimately, this corrective move has to play out completely, which could happen by Feb end or early March.
See, how can we forget that? 10% higher for ECC on Thursday. Sandeep, not all cement companies have come out with good numbers. But is this like a special situation? Because Adani Group took over, efficiencies have kicked in. 10% move is a mighty move in ACC on Thursday.
Yeah, but efficiencies can't kick in such a short period of time, so it takes time. So I think that process is still on. But I think the cement companies in the Adani Group also move along with the stocks of the Adani Group. They don't move along with the sector. So I think that's the feature of these stocks. But cement overall is I would say it's a decent story, but then they are unable to pass on price hikes. Capacity additions are very, very strong. So it's not a, and with the recent spike in crude and other input prices, there could be some impact of that. And valuations are high, so we need to be careful. Look to buy them on corrections, but not right now.
I'm just scanning through more and more numbers now, and there are a lot of downgrades which have actually come on AU. It's a very expensive stock, very expensive stock. Price to book 4 times 1 year forward, price to book 6 times 2 year forward. Now that's very expensive for any stock, for any bank, irrespective of what your brand or franchise value is. Sandeep, there are two options now in the banking sector. Go for PSU, where you are getting momentum, you are getting reasonable amount of comfort in terms of NPA and reasonable amount of comfort when it comes to CASA. That's option one. Option two is that you go for private banks, Kotak, HDFC, or perhaps ICICI Bank, where growth may not be great, but there is a brand and there is years and years of NPA, history which is quite decent. What should one do? Stay with PSUs when the near term growth will be better than private banks?
The PSU's growth will not be better. It's just that the reported profits are higher now because of the NPA cleanup. So a majority of the profit increase is coming through uh, write backs, recovery of old NPAs, etc. And net NPAs for most of the PSU banks, except for a few, is already so low that next year that might not repeat. See, in banking, you have to buy those banks who you think will be winners in the deposit race. And in the deposit race, the large private sector banks will be the winners. And in a tight liquidity scenario, we've seen that some of the PSU banks, the net interest income has hardly grown because, but the reported profit is higher because NPA write-offs are lower and they are write-backs, but next year that those the same things might not repeat. So you have to stick with the larger private sector banks, especially given the fact that these PSU banks have also rallied substantially in the near term. At some stage, when this paradigm changes, then we can reevaluate. But I would say stick with the large private sector banks and look to buy them on possibly more corrections over the next few weeks.
Sandeep, have to ask you about Indiabulls Housing. The fact that they've got now an approval for a rights issue and a sizable one at that. They're planning to raise about 3,600 odd crore rupees. You think this could be a turnaround story if the cards are played well?
See, housing finance as a business is under stress in terms of margins. So a standalone housing finance company, I think, will remain under stress. And Indiabulls Housing, despite being called a turnaround story, has had issues. Now, maybe this fundraising will finally fill up the holes in the balance sheet and they could recover. So I think that's something we'll need to watch, but I would still think it's a very long drawn story.
Fair point. Okay.
I'm just going to get closing comments from Sandeep as well. Sandeep, in this decline, has anything reached what could be called as your entry point, where you would say that, look, I'm happy to buy that stock now?
Yeah, the contrarian investor, I am buying into some of the consumption names which are getting sold out. So accumulating a small amount of stocks on the consumer durable side or stocks like Bata, etc. Because I believe that a lot of negativity is flowing in near-term performance. Clarity is not there, but then prices are off 30-35% from the top. So some accumulation in some of these kind of stocks at this stage. Majority of the other sectors we still need to wait out.
But if companies like HUL are not growing, which is like the bare minimum, Sandeep, I mean, that's like a necessity spend. It's not luxury spend. I mean, shoe can still be called as a luxury spend. But if necessity spend is not growing, if there is a volume challenge with companies like HUL, which are in the business of soap and shampoo, then should one look at the consumption basket at all?
Yeah, one should, because 2, 3 quarters down the line, when if inflation remains under control and consumption revives, and these companies report 7, 8% volume growth, so on those headlines, the stocks will not be available as cheap as they are today. They look expensive today because we are factoring in 2, 3% growth. But if growth revives to 7, 8%, which it eventually will, because in a 7% growing economy, ultimately consumption has to revive, and then you have to look for beneficiaries of that recovery, and the stocks which are trading maybe 20, 30, 25, 30% off their all-time highs. And so that's a pattern which you need to follow for many of these consumption names which have strong brands and good moat with them.
Interesting. Sandeep, have to ask you, what did you make of Rohan Bopanna's win? Clearly proving age is just a number. I'm sure you caught the matches.
Yeah, and he's playing much better than what he used to play 2 years back. So I think he's made his fitness better. And that actually shows that you can do a lot if you set your head onto it.
Good to have you, Sandeep, on the show as always. Let's move on.